Welcome back everybody to step 4 in the Pollinator project that we've been doing. We've been painting a blue tit in watercolour, and so far we've done the yellow breast and the blue head and the blue body, and we had the masking fluid to protect the white. Before today I've removed the masking fluid with this really neat little tool. It's called a mask away. It feels, let me open it for you. It feels like a piece of, it's like a bottom of a flip-flop. It is really odd. It's like crepe sole, and you literally run it over where you've had masking and it lifts off the masking fluid. Masking fluid that is been ingrained in your paper for ages that I never thought I would get off came off with this little handy tool. Not expensive at all. It even apparently gets glue out of fabric, so I highly recommend these little devices. Again, it's called a mask away. I got mine from the SAA, but you can get them from most good art shops or online art stores. Absolute little bargain tool. Okay, so the next bit of our project that we're going to focus on is we're going to get some of these shadows into the wing area, and we're going to put his superhero mask in, I like to call it, and these dark points here. And we are going to put his leg in today as well. Now I've mixed some colours up for you. I will always email you these colour charts too. Now the colours we're doing today, let me make sure I've got it all in shot for you. Okay, so we're going to use one of my favourite tones, and it's called Neutral Tint. It's not as strong as Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey is super strong, so I don't advise using it for something like this. It's just too strong. I like Neutral Tint. We've got indigo, Prussian blue. I've also used a mix of alizarin crimson and burnt umber. Okay, so we're going to be using that in areas of the beak and also his leg and the branch. Van Dyke brown and burnt umber on its own, black for his black points. Now you might find people say, oh, why are you using black with painting? There are times where black's okay, you know, they don't make it for no reason. And then we're going back to our original mix of lemon yellow with a touch of cerulean blue, and then with more cerulean blue for the shadows where we added to the mix. For just underneath here with this little joint where his leg joins. Okay, so let's just get straight on with painting. Again, 2 mixes, 2 pots of water. You want 1 for cleaning your brush and 1 for painting. I've already mixed up my paints in my palette. Let me detach it and show you. So just as I've got my palette here, I've mixed up just enough. You're not going to use a lot with this. It's not like you're doing a wash. Okay, so you just have to mix up enough to have by you. Not masses and masses. Okay, let me make sure I've got everything I need. I'm using a Rosemary & Co. number 5 brush, so quite a small end to it. And we're not going to be using lots and lots of water. Okay, he still looks really odd with his blue pupil, and he's going to stay remaining quite odd for a bit. And because we're not going to be taking this out. Not yet. Okay, I'm going to move my paints closer. Okay, so the area around his eye is not all black. It is a mixture of blues coming in. So pick up some of the indigo. Just with really small, short brush strokes. Paint it up to his eye. Now it's going to feel really quite odd, the fact that you've got this blue pupil in the middle. And I think that's where you benefit from sometimes having white masking fluid, not always blue. And there's a bit of dark above his beak. Okay, keep referring back to your reference photo. Okay. And again with the indigo, just from underneath his beak. You don't want to go straight over to this left side. If you remember, we put a very, very thin line of cobalt blue there. Flick the indigo over the yellow. Wash your brush off, dry off any excess. I have this piece of horrible tissue I carry on with me, it's like my little safety blanket. Dry it off and just soften up any edges. It works a treat to my little piece of disgusting tissue. And just look for any areas in your photograph where it's dark. Okay. Now again, now I would like you to pick up just a bit of neutral tint. We're not going to go straight in with black here. We're going to build it up in steps. I know it's fiddly, but I think it's worth it. It's a bit like botanical. I think you have to have a love for detail. And I think it pays off. Okay, so it's a little bit harsh there. Wash your brush off. Dry it off on your piece of disgusting tissue. And just soften up. Any edges. Then take your black. Pick up your black quite thickly off your palette. Paint over your masking fluid pupil. Okay, don't be tempted to just keep going bigger and bigger and bigger. It is a real temptation, and you'll just end up with this massive eye. Okay, wash your brush off. Just soften up any edges. Okay, let's put this beak in. Now the beak, if you look, okay, has this tiny tinge of blue to it underneath. You'll think that you've got it in because I've got blue masking fluid. It's not. Pick up a little bit of the cerulean mix that we've got with the yellow on your palette. Just give it a dusting in. Wash your brush off. Okay, and on the same bit, then I'd like you to pick up the alizarin crimson with burnt umber. And just start painting in the top part of the beak. Don't overwork it. And then a touch to the bottom. Okay, we don't want to overwork this. Okay, then pick up neutral tint. And on the bottom jaw only, okay, the bottom part of the beak, drop down the neutral tint. Okay, and then leave that alone for a bit. You can always go back after and add a little bit more detail. We need to leave it dry because we've got some masking fluid underneath that will remove. Wash your brush off. We need to add some detail along these wings. Okay, so I'd like you to pick up a little bit of Prussian blue first. Not a huge amount, we're just going to, let's put some detail in, just some lines. And just some shadowing, just to suggest layers. And just soften some of these masked areas that may have come off too big when we took the masking fluid off. And put some shadows in this back. Okay, if they come off, you take your brush off. The edge looks a little bit hard. Just soften them with a damp brush on the one edge. Not on the whole bit, just the one edge. Okay, so we don't want to soften these up, otherwise everything's going to start to look woolly and lose its definition. Let's increase shadow underneath this wing. Okay, so still with Prussian blue, let's just drop some more in and increase it. It gets really dark underneath here. And it goes all the way to this back section. And don't worry if you can't make out what some of these details are at the back. It's not important. Just put some shadows in for definition. But again, just take a damp brush. Just soften up the edge. Okay, dry it off on this piece of tissue. I'm constantly holding in my hand. Okay, I'm going to pick up a bit of indigo for underneath here. It's a little bit darker underneath here. It's not just Prussian. Don't cover all these little white speckles. But I want to provide a little bit more shadow alone than just what a Prussian alone is giving me. And paint in the vein. Okay, I'm going to leave that, otherwise it's going to become overworked. I want to pick up some neutral tint. And just on this back feather, on the back of the bird, it gets quite dark. Okay, so just on, show my shot, this little bit here, it actually gets quite dark. So just a touch of neutral tint. Not too much. We don't want to be going in heavy-handed. And then one bit where it is just too stark is this band here. So what we're going to do is, you may have remembered me saying we're going to borrow pigment. We're not going to paint any colour at all. We're borrowing pigment from neighbouring areas. Same here, borrowing pigment. Watercolour isn't permanent, so any areas that are too stark, we're just going to borrow a little bit of pigment. Same with anything on the face. If you need a bit more colour, borrow a little bit from somewhere else. Just for a touch. That's all you need. Hardly anything. Okay, while that's drying, we're going to put in his leg joint. The lemon yellow and cerulean mix straight in underneath. Little bit of cerulean there. And then I'm actually going to pick up a tiny little bit of neutral tint, really only a small amount, just on this back bit, just to suggest a shadow. And then I'm going to soften it, which means I'm going to take some off. That's better, it was just too dark. Okay, and then on this bit of foot, okay, so we've got a bit of foot going along here. Can you see this foot? It's got a tinge of blue to it. So let's put in this blue. It's actually a really nice bright blue. So let's pick up some Prussian. Let's paint some of this Prussian along this toe before it curves. Okay, and he has as well here, so let's put it in here as well. And these are his 2 feet, so let's get these in. And we need to leave these dry. We don't want these to run. Wash your brush off. Okay, and I'd like you to use your, let's go for burnt umber, please. So pick up, actually let's go for Van Dyke Brown and Burnt Umber because it's darker. And you're going to go from where the joint is, being careful not to make the leg thick. We don't want to make him look like Chunky Monkey. Less is definitely more. If you can't see it, it's best not to put it in. Okay, again here, if you can't see it, suggest it. We only know his foot is there because you can see a subtle shine of blue. It's the only reason I know his foot is there. And wash your brush off. Okay, now am I happy with everything we've got in? I want to soften up, join there, a little bit there, and I want to darken up his beak underneath. I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of black. Don't want it too wet on the bottom bit of the beak, and then underneath there, not too much there, and just look to see if there's anywhere else that you've missed, or if there's any shrink back where the masking fluid is shrunk or the paper has shrunk back, if there's anywhere you wish to darken. Okay, so I'd like to darken a little bit of black just at the bottom of that tail feather underneath. And a couple of places here. Just to really suggest the layers and individual feathers. I don't want to fiddle too much. Okay, wash your brush off. Now we made an alizarin crimson and burnt umber mix. It's the same one that we used on the beak. Take that mix, give it a good reactivate it in your palette. And just along this branch here, I'm going to start painting in shapes. Follow your reference photo. Okay, so have it in mind. Follow your areas of your photo. Any areas that you've painted over with your background when you were doing your wash, you can go over the top of them. But just in general, I'm going to sketch it in with your paintbrush now. It won't be perfect, and that's fine. Okay, then pick up bits of brown, the darker mix of brown, whilst it's still damp. And sketch into it. So you're using the end of the paintbrush to draw into the branch. Okay, if you start to feel as though you're not sure, wash your brush off, take stock of where you're going, and look to see where you're going again, and start again. Just take a minute to take that breather and work out where you're going. Okay, so the next bit is up here. Let's check I'm in shot. I am, yes. Okay, so we've got areas we can sketch in. It's lighter, slightly lighter on top. Then the bark is darker underneath. You can leave some white showing through. After all, it is watercolour. And it's little breakages of light that quite often bring watercolour to light, to life, sorry. And these little passages. Okay, so then again follow it. Just follow your drawing. Use your paintbrush just as you would a pencil. And draw in any areas. Sketch with it. There is no right or wrong. Make it up as you go round. Doesn't matter if it's different from your photograph. That's what's beautiful about all these different pictures. Is when you see them. Okay, so if you've got pencil showing through, you want to cover it, again just drop some of the darker brown in. Okay, then wash your brush off. Don't overwork it. Okay, so your fine line between messing, fiddling, and creating a beautiful picture and overworking it. Okay, let me see if this is dry. Okay, so let me show you this mask away. This is dry now, and I've been waiting to take this eye off for as long as I remember. All you do is you literally grab it and it's taken it off. Let's do the same with the beak. And that's it. Okay, it's as simple as that, and then you just wash it. Okay, so his eye, his pupil's too big. It looks a bit like the zombie blue tit right now, and these highlights are too big. So we need to do something about that. We don't want to lose this highlight, but it certainly needs to be made smaller. So reactivate the black on your palette. Give you the point of your brush a really good roll. To make sure it's really pointed. Choose one side, don't go round it all. If you go round every single side, it will disappear and you'll lose it. Okay, is it small enough? It's still too big. This highlight is deceptively tiny. Okay, if you were to have a disaster and lose the whole highlight, it wouldn't be the end of the world. You could put it back in with white gouache or acrylic. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but that looks far better. Okay, so again, we're going to tidy up the highlight underneath here. Okay, so we've kept a small line. Wash the brush off. And we're going to, this time, let's see if we can go in and just soften this. Let's add a bit of blue to the top. That's better. So this time we didn't really want to add any more paint. Okay, it's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to take a little bit of the paint out. Again with my manky bit of tissue. Just add a little bit of red to it. Okay, so I'm a lot happier with that. Highlights are smaller. Picking up a little bit more black, just to increase shadow to the top. Is there anywhere else that we've missed? Let's make it a little bit thicker here. He's got a little bit of a thicker neck. There. And whilst we've got some neutral tint on the palette, I want to add a little bit. Okay, so we're going to put it on, then we're actually going to take it back again. Okay, so don't forget it's going to dry a lot lighter. Better. Okay, because here he has this fold. And I think we need some neutral tint underneath. Yeah, we need something underneath. Just a little bit. Okay, so put a lot on, a little bit on. That's better. Much better. Okay, now I'm still not happy with these. It's lacking definition. Okay, so let's pick up the burnt umber. Just whilst it's on there, let's draw in some bark. let's darken up the leg by picking up some neutral tint and just going over foot, bottom half of the leg, so I haven't gone all the way up to the top. Over the blue, and then just over the outer foot. And again, I didn't go right up to the top. Okay, now I'm going to leave him at that, I think, for this step, because otherwise we are in danger, especially of overworking the wood. It's easily done. Just going to add a little bit of detail just to knock back the pinky brown. But we are starting to go a little bit muddy there. Okay, so we do need, well, I'm faffing. Okay, so we need to stop faffing. Okay, so the blue tit is finally finished. So our next lesson is going to be covering painting in the pink of the flowers and the green of the leaves. That might take one lesson, it might take two, depends on how well it goes, but this needs to dry, and the reason why this needs to dry really well is if you try and paint the pink now, it's going to run. It really is going to run. We're going to need to go back to checking your greens out. Okay, so you are going to need to swatch your greens. So before the next lesson, what I would suggest you do is practice mixing greens. Quite often the greens in your palette don't make the best greens. They don't come out at all well for realistic looking greens at all. So I suggest you have a play, see what greens you can make. So for example, I know in my palette I have an unknown green that's not labelled. I have these hookers and intense, and emerald. None of these are at all suitable for this. However, you can make your own one with cadmium yellow and cerulean blue, with gamboge and ultramarine. These make for far better greens here than any of the ones on the top. So have a play before next week, after you've done this step, on how you can make your own greens, like gamboge and Prussian. So using your yellows and blues, have a play with what yellows and blues you have in your palette to make greens, because you will probably find for the next step you don't use the greens in your palette, and it's going to be very much using what you have rather than greens I give you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing what you create. Take care, everybody.